Urgent. Poland has made a bold move. Warsaw has grabbed Putin by the throat. The decisive matter lies on Tusk's desk. Kyiv and Warsaw have formed a single fist of vengeance that will crush the Kremlin. This conveyor of death can no longer be stopped. Shock over Chernobyl. Something eerie has been detected, and it's coming straight from Belarus. Putin and Lukashenko are preparing a new trap in the north. Was Lukashenko finally pressured, but the Ukrainian Armed Forces have an unexpected surprise ready. At this moment, Japanese forces advance on the Kremlin. The samurai are entering the fight. Tokyo is lifting the taboo and launching a conveyor belt of death for the occupiers. The iron veto has been lifted, and the generals in the Kremlin are clutching their heads. All this and more in our episode Hell Point. It has happened. Warsaw has dared to do it. Poland is preparing for battle with Putin. Warsaw and Kyiv are uniting their military might. Avenger drones are already on the assembly line, and the Kremlin is in a vice. Europe's iron fist is tightening, and secret factories have already been launched. What deadly trap have they prepared for the Russian army together with the armed forces of Ukraine? Watch to find out.
NATO is falling apart while Poland is drawing closer to Ukraine. After a brief cooling-off period, Kyiv and Warsaw have begun to strengthen their military cooperation. The greatest threat to the transatlantic community is not external enemies, but the ongoing process of our alliance's disintegration. We all must do everything necessary to stop this destructive trend. In Poland, once the closest European ally of the United States, statements and actions by Donald Trump are being assessed with clear-eyed realism. In a situation where the North Atlantic Alliance is falling apart from within,
in today's global landscape, the importance of bilateral cooperation and strategic alliances has come to the forefront of international relations. Nations are prioritizing these partnerships more than ever, recognizing that collaborative efforts and shared security frameworks are essential for maintaining stability and fostering economic growth. This shift highlights a renewed focus on diplomatic engagement and the collective power of unified international agreements.
Not being a NATO member, Ukraine has become a world leader in the production of military drones and various types of unmanned aerial vehicles. The Polish plan to create a drone army will be implemented with the support of technical developments and expertise in the field of drones from our Ukrainian friends. Poland must have an arsenal of unmanned aerial vehicles so that we can not only help Ukraine today, but also confidently tell Poles that we are safe. Warsaw is more interested than ever in Ukrainian developments, technologies, and the experience of military personnel and engineers, thanks to which Kyiv has been resisting the Russian military machine for the 5th year and also impresses NATO military personnel during joint exercises.
At that time, a group of 10 back operators were able, in theory, to successfully eliminate up to 2 full battalions of enemy personnel and evacuate up to 50 units of armored combat vehicles from Asturia. This simulated enemy outcome, accordingly, served as a cold shower for the senior leadership of the North Atlantic Alliance.
According to the Deputy Minister of National Defense of Poland, Cezary Tomczuk, Poland is counting on the creation of joint drone production facilities, the promotion of technological exchange, as well as the opportunity to test its own drones and military equipment in real combat conditions on the territory of Ukraine. This is
the extensive operational usage of FPV drones for the effective destruction of enemy personnel and equipment, and in a similar fashion, accordingly, the strategic use of interceptor drones to destroy various aerodynamic munitions. That is why there is such interest from the Polish side. When we take into careful consideration the fact that the Russian Federation is frequently and persistently raising the possibility of incursions into Polish territory, as well as the entire territory of the Republic of Belarus, with the strategic aim of establishing the so-called Suwałki corridor.
During transatlantic turbulence, it is specifically Ukrainian technologies and the combat experience of the armed forces of Ukraine that become the main and stable guarantor of security for the European continent.
Shock. A Belarus invasion, a mystery object over Chernobyl, Zelensky alerted Ukraine. What is this? A sign of an air assault or a new secret weapon of Kremlin? Lukashenko plans a surprise strike for Putin. The father is watched by the bunker dweller. What's next? Watch.
Are they providing adequate training for their pilots? Or are there still significant deficiencies and shortcomings?
Is Lukashenko up to something?
Lukashenko keeps saying the word war. We are preparing for war. Why? He is psychologically preparing us for this red threshold, the red line, so that if it happens, we will already...
Ukrainian border guards have recently noticed some unusual activity near the Belarusian border.
The day before, there was rather unusual activity along the sections of the Ukraine-Belarus border, on the Belarusian side. We are carefully recording everything, keeping everything under control. If necessary, we will respond.
The president did not specify exactly what kind of activity was meant, but added that Ukraine is fully ready to defend its sovereignty.
During March, strategic command and military exercises were conducted. Lukashenko was traveling through the Belarusian forests to places of partisan glory, sternly reprimanding his generals, saying he would skin them alive, insisting that every single one of them must lose weight, and that everyone must be in top physical shape. Well, he behaved in his usual manner, amplifying the image of a stern supreme commander-in-chief.
The head of the Center for Countering Disinformation, Andriy Kovalenko, also responded to the reports of activity from Belarus.
All their actions in the border area are currently being monitored. Their possible actions are limited. Only minor provocations may occur, costing the Belarusian side more, nothing more. So Belarusians should avoid it.
Earlier, Zelensky had already expressed the opinion that Russia would try once again to drag Belarus into its war.
As for the threat from Belarus, well, if we consider the situation, the Russians have a wide variety of highly crazy ideas, and some truly unbelievable and imaginative scenarios at that. That's why we really don't want Belarus to get drawn into these fantastic ideas, so that they don't turn into a terrible reality.
Intelligence reports show that near the Belarus border, roads are heading toward Ukrainian territory and artillery positions are being established.
I have instructed, through the appropriate channels, to warn the de facto leadership of Belarus about Ukraine's readiness to defend its land and independence.
The president of the nation of Ukraine has also officially implemented a series of new sanctions.
These specific restrictive measures and economic sanctions have been officially implemented against a group of prominent Belarusian individuals and various state-owned enterprises. This decision was made to address ongoing international concerns by targeting the financial assets and the operational capabilities of those closely linked to the current administration and its industrial sectors. They manufacture components for 122mm and 152mm caliber artillery shells for the Russian military, Olsa, Minsk plant, Thermoplast.
The spokesperson for the State Border Guard Service, Andriy Demchenko, said that Ukrainian border guards are not observing any movement of equipment or troop buildup near the border on the territory of Belarus, of troops. But this does not mean that Lukashenko's regime is not helping Putin.
Based on the latest information currently available, Russia is actively providing them with advanced air defense systems in order to create a comprehensive air shield over Belarus. And the fifth, which is actually closely related to the fourth, the fifth factor is the increasingly evident and significant intensification of cooperation between the Russian army and the Belarusian army.
The Russian Kremlin is using the territory of Belarus to remotely control strike drones during attacks on Ukraine. In addition, equipment used to guide kamikaze drones to targets in the western regions of Ukraine has been deployed near the border. And the self-proclaimed president of Belarus, Lukashenko, is trying to scare everyone by claiming that the Russian ballistic complex Oreshnik is already in Belarus.
What we are witnessing right now are unmistakable and deliberate preparations for a significant military escalation. This situation means that the strategically important northern front once again demands a renewed level of focus and attention from the Ukrainian military.
A retired SBU Major General stated that the main threat from Belarus is not a possible renewed offensive, but rather Russia's use of this territory as a military staging ground.
It must be understood that Belarus, it is no longer just a neighbor of Ukraine or Poland, it is a military staging ground for Russia. And the threat lies not only in an offensive, but in the constant and heavy pressure on both Ukraine and Poland. Is an offensive from the territory of Belarus possible? At this moment, no, definitely not. That is, not as an independent operation by Belarus. The Belarusian army has neither the resources nor the motivation for a large-scale offensive.
But Putin could wrest control from his longtime comrade and friend, though, through clever deception.
If Russia decides that the territory of Belarus will once again be used without any restrictions, it can simply do so just like that, even without the consent of the Belarusian leadership. The main thing is that most likely the Belarusian army will be scattered among various Russian units, and then the question of their motivation or experience will no longer really matter.
The commander of the special unit Kraken, Kostiantin Nemichov, is of the opinion that Putin may already be considering the option of hybrid use of his military troops from the sovereign territory of Belarus.
From a military point of view, the Belarusian army is currently not ready for full-scale combat operations and remains a weak structure. At the same time, according to intelligence, Russia is considering the option of hybrid use of its troops from the territory of Belarus in combination with Belarusian units. There is reason to believe that Russia is once again trying to drag Belarus into the war. This is not about a large-scale offensive, but rather about border provocations, creating tension in the north of Ukraine, and an attempt to divert part of the armed forces of Ukraine from key directions in the east and south. No offensives against Kyiv, Lutsk, Zhytomyr, or Rivne are being predicted. Such scenarios are currently unrealistic.
If you recall what Lukashenko said in the spring of this year, it becomes quite clear. The rhetoric is military.
It seems there can be no truly peaceful moment. We are preparing for war.
In addition to loud statements, Lukashenko signed a decree on the mobilization of reserve officers.
A mobilization that Lukashenko demonstratively carried out. This is not a typical mobilization. It looks more like a tool of propaganda.
We should not dismiss the fact that this could be an attempt to intimidate not only Ukraine, but also the Baltic countries.
This puts even more pressure on the Baltic countries, suggesting that if we, the Russians, continue to advance, then the Belarusians will gladly join in as well. For Lukashenko, neither of these available options is especially attractive or desirable. However, facing the battle-hardened Ukrainian army is, for him, a far more daunting and significant challenge than confronting and managing the patriotic but equally inexperienced armies of the Baltic countries.
Belarus's actions along the border with Ukraine are under control. This was reported by the head of the Center for Countering Disinformation.
As for Belarus, all their actions in the border area are currently being monitored. From their side, possible actions are limited. Only minor provocations are possible, which would end up costing the Belarusian side more. Nothing more, so it would be better for the Belarusians not to do them.
And what is Ukraine doing? Our government has sent a clear signal to the Belarusian leadership about the inadmissibility of any provocations. The very fact of escalation depends on a combination of diplomatic and military actions. At the same time, it should be understood that Ukraine has sufficient capabilities to quickly demonstrate a response if necessary.
Japanese samurai joined the Ukrainian Armed Forces. Tokyo is lifting the ban. Killer drones will burn out the occupiers. Now, Japanese lethal weaponry will officially flow to Kyiv. What exactly is Tokyo sending to Zelensky? Why are Russian generals more afraid of Japanese technology than of Western missiles? Watch this.
After 80 long years of neutrality, pacifism, and the concealment of their sins have come to an end. Japan is once again making its re-entry into the global arms market. Despite what seemed like an excessively long absence, Tokyo is in the race for the most powerful and advanced precise weapons. The country has not lost its significant potential and can compete with the world's top global powers.
Japan has a significant amount of experience. The only thing left for us now is to scale up our production and determine where to produce it.
At the same time, it is Ukraine that Japan is most interested in today. After all, Kyiv is the birthplace of the most advanced and effective drones, which Japan is now betting on as the primary focus in the modernization process of its own army. And yes, many analysts believe that cooperation between Ukraine and Japan is reaching a completely new level. Atuko. The traditionally neutral country is now shifting toward militarization. And without official Kyiv, Tokyo simply won't manage.
Japan is deeply interested in Ukraine's approaches to the use of drones, not just limited to maritime but also aerial ones. This specifically concerns production technologies to a lesser extent and tactics and integration with other combat means to a much greater extent.
The changes began last year with the arrival of the new Prime Minister Sanayeta Kaichi. They continued in February 2026 with her party's victory in the parliamentary elections. And they are intensifying right now, which is why interest in Ukraine is also growing.
In the context of growing regional security threats, clearly no individual nation can guarantee peace and its own security alone. Lifting the ban will allow allied and friendly nations to strengthen our collective defense capabilities and prevent future conflicts.
By the way, their own arsenals. Japan has not failed to strengthen its own modern military forces, despite its commitment to pacifism. Many experts frequently observe and point out that Tokyo can now compete with any major nation in Europe.
Japan has built 2 aircraft carriers, bought F-35 planes from the Americans, and missiles for those planes. And the Americans made a video showing that, well, yes, it's just a destroyer with a flight deck where 20 planes can fit on one of the ships. Japan managed to buy 400 missiles from the Americans. Tomahawk, having officially signed the contract right on schedule in the year 2023. You know, an exclusively peaceful and friendly country, which now has long-range capabilities. And
previously, before all of these recent developments, this was only for domestic use, but it is now possible for it to be supplied to allies. Since 2014, exports were very strictly limited and restricted to just 5 specific categories of non-lethal equipment, such as for demining or rescue operations. Now, however, direct deliveries of missiles, warships, ammunition, and aircraft are permitted.
Does this mean that Japan is turning into a military state? Not yet. This is an element that is purely economic in nature. A military-industrial complex as such has not formed in Japan. And despite all its exceptional economic and technological power, military production remains a weak link. Japan wants to give military manufacturers a broader range of opportunities to develop modern systems. And
the most advanced ones are unmanned systems. That's where the interest in Ukraine comes from. After all, our interceptor drones have truly proven that today they are the best solution against enemy UAVs.
And instead of creating everything from scratch, it's possible to produce products inexpensively by adapting ready-made commercial components. And since we're talking about mass production, it's easier to get components and the production speed is higher, as the market is developing rapidly. In this sense, the Ukrainian business model and accumulated experience are valuable. That's what is valued.
At the same time, Ukraine is willing to share its experience. At the state level, meetings have taken place repeatedly, the latest of which resulted in the allocation of a new aid package worth $6 billion. Mostly, these are investments in our economy, as well as non-lethal equipment such as vehicles for the military, bulletproof vests, helmets, and medical supplies. However, when talking about defense, one should not exclude air defense systems, specifically missiles for the Patriot systems. Patriots fit perfectly into Japan's current doctrine of not transferring weapons that can destroy enemy personnel or equipment. However, it seems that even this rule will soon be broken. After all, in Japan, the population is now openly supporting the militarization of the country against the backdrop of threats from China and Russia. And it seems there is now an understanding that the status of being eternally neutral is not a salvation.
China is seriously concerned about this decision. In the past, Japanese militarism led to aggressive expansion and vicious and brutal killings against China and its neighboring countries in Asia.
At the same time, the first attempts to reach the international level of supporting Ukraine specifically with weapons have already been made. In the near future, Tokyo is preparing to announce its accession to the Purell Initiative, due to the purchase of weapons for Kyiv. Experts have not ruled out the possibility of the direct transfer of weapons stockpiled in warehouses.
For example, M270 MLRS systems, Italian self-propelled FH-70 howitzers, and the Type 87 anti-aircraft system, which I should note is similar to the German Gepard. Furthermore, the Japanese have their own original school of armored vehicle construction, and tanks certainly remain important and relevant in modern warfare.
We, on the other hand, already have a ready-made model for drone production, including both maritime and ground-based UAVs, as well as reconnaissance and interceptor drones, which opens up a wide range of opportunities for mutually beneficial cooperation.
Japan has a vast amount of specialized expertise in manufacturing. The only thing left for us now is to expand our production capacity and figure out exactly where to manufacture it, either in Japan or perhaps we could set up this entire production line directly within the borders of Ukraine. But everyone understands that what we are critically lacking is air defense missiles. This is especially true after the United States directly refused to grant us a license to produce these missiles within the borders of Ukraine. The only thing we can get is not just from the Americans, but also from someone else. For example, Japan.
At the same time, Japan's Ministry of Defense is also considering the direct purchase of Ukrainian UAVs. According to recent reports from Kyodo News, the agency has received about $1.7 billion in new funding to significantly strengthen its defense with the help of advanced drones. Oh, and if Tokyo eventually decides to arm itself with the very best models, these drones will highly likely be of Ukrainian origin.
The operation to clear the Transnistrian enclave has begun. Kyiv and Chisinau are closing the net on the Kremlin. The countdown for the Russian troops has started. The secret plan has been set in motion. How exactly will the armed forces of Ukraine help Maya Sandu? Watch.
Putin is furious. Russia is losing its influence in Transnistria.
There is absolutely nothing unexpected here for us, but the official statistics confirm this.
At the beginning of 2026, Moldova officially began the process of peaceful reintegration, Transnistria. They developed a plan for the deoccupation and demilitarization of the region together with the EU and the USA.
We need a process through which the region will be demilitarized, de-oligarchized, and democratized. And to implement this stage, we will need international support. This is exactly what we are currently discussing, primarily with the EU. So, this is part of the discussion regarding reintegration plans.
Whereas previously Chisinau only called on Russia to withdraw its troops at international forums, now the authorities have introduced real mechanisms for the economic and logistical isolation of the Russian contingent. In April, Moldova took an unprecedented step by declaring the leadership of the Russian military operational group persona non grata. This effectively served to block their capability to leave the region. Any attempt to leave Transnistria will inevitably lead to deportation and a lifetime ban on entering Moldova.
There have been a significant number of painful blows, so for now, Putin will probably just, let's say, publicly disregard these recent developments and pretend that nothing is happening. Although, of course, he might very well be meticulously planning some kind of revenge. As long as Russia maintains its imperialist ambitions, it will hold on to this region. So, to be honest, I believe more in some kind of forceful combinations rather than peaceful solutions. At the same time, of course, Moldova won't be able to do this without Ukraine's support.
The situation around Transnistria is indeed becoming increasingly difficult for Russia, which is causing serious concern in the Kremlin. On April 2nd, the Moldovan parliament officially annulled the main agreements regarding the CIS. At this point, the country is no longer officially a part of this organization.
In many ways, this is a largely symbolic and performative gesture because the CIS as an actual structure has effectively ceased to function or exist for a long time. Russia nominally continues to host and organize summits and other related events. In fact, it is widely understood by all observers that the CIS doesn't really exist in any meaningful way. So this is a symbolic gesture, a symbolic break with Russia.
Transnistria is a region of Moldova that is effectively occupied by Russia as a result of a brief but violent conflict in 1992. Since then, the Russian government has used this region for its own strategic purposes.
The conflict in Transnistria, however, remained largely frozen and stagnant, and for many years, hardly any political actors made a serious effort to reignite it. Everyone eventually accepted the status quo, although the government in Moldova never gave up the claim to its rightful territories. But the main focus has consistently been on using diplomatic and economic non-military instruments for the reintegration of these lands, seen, for example, in the strategic context of Moldova's national reintegration process.
President Maya Sandu believes that a peaceful resolution of the conflict in the unrecognized Transnistria is possible thanks to the fact that Ukraine will push the Russian army far away from.
When we examine the geographical boundaries and the borders of Moldova, we find a landlocked nation in Eastern Europe, situated between Romania to the west and Ukraine to the north, east, and south. This strategically located country features a scenic landscape of rolling hills near the Dniester and Prut rivers, which help to clearly define its international limits and its unique place within the broader European continent. It currently continues to exist as a sovereign state, primarily due to the fact that Ukraine continues to bravely resist the Russian invasion.
In essence, the war in Ukraine has accelerated Moldova's departure from Russia and its movement toward the west. Chisinau maintains neutrality, but in reality it is in close partnership with Ukraine, seeking security through European integration.
The most important factor is the Russian-Ukrainian war, which moreover also represents a certain window of opportunity for Moldova. So what now? While Russia is bogged down in the war against Ukraine, as practice shows, it no longer has the resources to pursue any kind of aggressive policy. In other parts of the post-Soviet space, that is, of course, this includes the Caucasus and other regions,
Russia is undergoing a large-scale process of geopolitical retreat. The Kremlin is losing positions that once seemed unshakable. For 30 years, Transnistria was the perfect tool of control. Today, this lever has been broken.
Shock is the new era of bloody revenge. Robert Madyar-Brovdy has become the chief architect of victory in the skies. His tactics drone reality, break the backbone of Russian logistics and burn through reserves before they even reach the front. Madyar has launched a conveyor belt of destruction that cannot be stopped. How is this man turning the tide of the war? Watch.
The hunt never stops. The armed forces of Ukraine give Putin's soldiers no rest. The unmanned systems forces, together with other units of the defense forces, have essentially turned the use of drones into a daily conveyor belt for destroying the enemy's resources. Of the enemy.
The unmanned systems forces are, in a sense, a groundbreaking and revolutionary unit, a revolutionary branch of the military which, apart from perhaps some initial levels currently seen in Russia and China, they simply do not exist in any comparable form in other countries. This is a truly unique branch of the military that sets the relevant global trends, and I think many others will inevitably follow this pioneering example in the future. This includes even the world's most powerful leading armies, such as the United States, various NATO armies, and many others.
In just the first 20 days of April, our units managed to disable 18 enemy air defense targets in the temporarily occupied territories. The most recent targets were a radar station belonging to the S-350 Vityaz system and a Tor M2KM surface-to-air missile system. The systematic destruction of enemy air defense systems paves the way for Ukrainian drones to reach strategic targets deep within Russian territory. For example, as a result of strikes on oil infrastructure, Russia loses about $100 million in revenue every day. This was reported by the commander of the Unmanned Systems Forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Robert Brovdy.
He is widely known across the military by his distinctive tactical call sign Madyar. This designation serves as his primary identifier during radio communications and represents his leadership within the current theater. Despite the ongoing nature of the war with Ukraine, Russia still retains the full capacity to increase its purchases and financial support for the military conflict.
Brovdy has become one of the symbols of the technological transformation of the armed forces of Ukraine. Under his leadership, a concept was implemented in which no enemy equipment can approach Ukrainian positions unnoticed. The combination of aerial reconnaissance and instant strikes by FPV drones has radically changed defensive tactics.
The strategic power of unmanned systems, along with the specialized units directly engaged in this field, promise the destruction of enemy forces, their preservation and subsequent operations, reconnaissance operations, which today are the most effective by a whole range of indicators. Furthermore, the enemy does not manage to adapt in time to our constantly changing and evolving tactics.
Robert Brovdy, who began his service as a volunteer, created an aerial reconnaissance unit that grew from a platoon into a powerful structure. Since 2025, he has been appointed commander of the Unmanned Systems Forces, which have become the digital intelligence of the Ukrainian army. Thanks to their developments, Ukraine is leading the global race in defense technologies, transforming the battlefield into a space of robotic systems. According to...
Based on the estimates from the Ukrainian president, the front line at the moment is staying at practically the same position as it was a year ago. And this is quite telling, especially when considering the serious issues of undermanning within the defense forces of Ukraine. That is, it was precisely unmanned systems on the front line that allowed the defense forces of Ukraine to conduct an effective active defense. Moreover, it was unmanned systems that laid the groundwork for successful Ukrainian counteroffensives.
The power of unmanned systems accomplished what previously seemed impossible. They have completely eliminated the concept of a safe rear for the occupiers.
Today, the power of unmanned systems is evident not only along the line of engagement, There is control in the lower airspace, as well as over separate locations and sections of the front where the enemy is conducting offensive operations, but we are also achieving control deeper into the near-rear zone. We control the enemy's logistics and destroy their logistics. We are successfully covering distances of between 50 and 60 kilometers. We are not just staying put along the line of engagement, not just remaining within the boundaries of the kill zone, but are actively advancing much deeper.
Even the Kremlin's mouthpieces can no longer keep silent about the reality. Russian propagandists are increasingly admitting the helplessness of their army in the face of Ukraine's technological breakthrough and the new tactics of the armed forces of Ukraine. That's all from me for now. This was Yarina Taslanova with you. Even more scorching news from the front in our next broadcast. And in the meantime, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like. See you soon.